This is the shocking case of Anika, an Indian nurse in Dubai, whose secret affair with wealthy patient Samir turned deadly when his wife, Neha, uncovered their private videos. Stay with us as we unravel every twist, every secret, and every betrayal in this shocking true crime story. Support our channel by subscribing now and stay active to never miss the full story. An Indian nurse arrived in Dubai full of hope and ambition, leaving behind her family and familiar surroundings for a life she imagined would be prosperous and stable. She was careful, professional, and known among colleagues for her dedication, always attentive to patients' needs and meticulous in her duties. The hospital she joined was modern, with polished floors and strict routines, yet amid the structured environment, personal lives often intersected with professional responsibilities. She was assigned to care for a wealthy, middle-aged patient recovering from surgery, a man whose presence immediately felt commanding. He was polite, appreciative, and possessed an air of authority that subtly drew people toward him, including her. At first, her attention was purely professional, focused on monitoring his health and assisting with daily tasks. Over time, however, small interactions began to develop an unspoken tension. Casual conversations lingered longer than necessary, subtle gestures became charged with meaning, and she found herself thinking of him outside the hospital hours. The intimacy inherent in caregiving created a dangerous proximity, and she felt emotions she had not expected, a mix of excitement and unease. The man, too, seemed drawn to her presence, often requesting her assistance for reasons that went beyond medical necessity. Each smile, each private moment, added layers to a growing connection, one that was strictly forbidden but increasingly difficult to resist. She told herself it was harmless curiosity, a fleeting attraction, yet a sense of anticipation grew within her. Unbeknownst to her, these initial sparks were laying the foundation for a web of desire, secrecy, and eventual danger that neither could foresee. As weeks passed, the nurse and her patient found themselves drawn into a private world that existed outside the hospital's sterile walls. What began as casual conversations and professional attention evolved into secret meetings, arranged under the pretense of medical follow-ups or errands. Messages were exchanged discreetly, carefully worded to avoid detection, and each notification on her phone brought a mix of anticipation and fear. The nurse felt a thrill in these hidden interactions, the kind of excitement that made her heart race and her mind spiral with possibilities. Every meeting was meticulously planned, often in quiet cafes, dimly lit lounges, or brief walks in secluded areas, away from the watchful eyes of colleagues and family. Their conversations, initially about mundane matters, slowly turned personal, revealing desires, frustrations, and vulnerabilities that neither had shared with anyone else. The patient began to rely on her presence for comfort and attention beyond what a caregiver should provide, while she found herself increasingly invested in his emotions, drawn to his charm, and intoxicated by the intimacy of their connection. With each encounter, boundaries blurred, and the line between professionalism and passion faded. In their growing boldness, they started recording private videos, believing these moments were theirs alone, captured in secrecy for memories they could savor privately. The nurse told herself it was harmless, that no one would ever see these recordings, yet each act carried an invisible risk. The secrecy itself added a new intensity, a dangerous allure that made every stolen minute feel like both liberation and transgression. Unaware of the consequences that loomed, they continued down a path where desire, obsession, and risk intertwined, setting the stage for events that could spiral completely out of control. The relationship between the nurse and the patient deepened with an intensity that neither could fully control. What had started as fleeting attraction now consumed their thoughts, shaping their daily routines and decisions. Their encounters became more daring, no longer limited to casual meetings or quiet walks. Each moment together was a calculated risk, yet the thrill of secrecy pushed them further, dissolving the boundaries of right and wrong. The nurse found herself making choices she would have never considered before, rationalizing her actions with fantasies of escape and passion. The patient, too, became increasingly dependent on her presence, unable to resist the magnetic pull of their connection despite knowing the consequences. Their private videos, once an occasional indulgence, multiplied rapidly, each one capturing moments of vulnerability and desire. They believed themselves untouchable, imagining that their secrets were safe behind locked devices and encrypted folders. Every new recording heightened the tension, creating a fragile sense of invincibility that masked the dangers surrounding them. Yet, as their obsession grew, small signs of recklessness began to appear. The nurse would linger longer in the patient's room, take unexplained detours, or respond to messages in haste, all while trying to maintain the illusion of professionalism. The patient's attention, once reserved for health matters, now included constant messages and requests that tethered them together even when apart. There was an unspoken understanding that their connection was fragile, but neither was willing to step back. The intensity of desire, combined with the secrecy of their actions, created a volatile environment where a single misstep could trigger consequences neither had anticipated. What had begun as attraction was evolving into a dangerous obsession that was impossible to control. Tension began to creep into the patient's household as subtle signs of change went unnoticed at first. The wife, attentive to her husband's routines and habits, started noticing small inconsistencies that did not add up. Phone calls were answered in hushed tones, schedules became unpredictable, and fleeting moments of distraction hinted at secrets she could not yet define. She initially dismissed these observations as stress or fatigue, but a persistent unease grew over time. Every unexplained absence and every hesitant explanation began to plant seeds of suspicion in her mind. The nurse and the patient, confident in their secrecy, continued their clandestine meetings without realizing how closely they were being observed. Their growing boldness made them careless, their assumptions about privacy leading them to underestimate the consequences of exposure. Meanwhile, the wife's instincts sharpened with each small clue, her awareness quietly expanding, like a shadow creeping across a wall. She began connecting minor inconsistencies, noticing patterns that seemed too deliberate to be accidental. The patient, caught between obsession and duty, struggled to maintain control, unaware that his careful compartmentalization was unraveling. The nurse, too, remained unaware of the silent scrutiny that was gradually encroaching on her hidden life, believing herself untouchable in a world where her attention was focused entirely on desire and thrill. What had been private was no longer entirely so. The veil of secrecy had thin spots, and the cracks were widening with each passing day. The stage was being set for a confrontation, one that neither the nurse nor the patient had anticipated, while the wife, quietly vigilant, prepared to act on the suspicions that had been quietly festering, threatening to turn hidden passion into public disaster. The moment the wife discovered the hidden videos was a turning point that changed everything. What had once been a private indulgence for the nurse and her patient now became undeniable proof of betrayal. She stumbled upon the files while browsing the family computer, a simple action that unleashed a storm of anger and disbelief. Each video she opened confirmed what she had only suspected in fragments, and the reality of the affair hit her with full force. Shock gave way to calculated fury as she absorbed every detail: the private gestures, the stolen intimacy, the audacity of two people thinking they could hide such acts. The wife's mind raced, assessing the implications, the potential for exposure, and the power this knowledge gave her. What had been hidden behind screens and secrecy now existed as tangible evidence, capable of destroying careers, reputations, and relationships. Meanwhile, the nurse, unaware that her private moments had been discovered, continued her routine, oblivious to the growing danger. The patient, too, remained blind to the consequences that had quietly begun to ripple through his household. The wife, composed and deliberate, began planning her next move, weighing whether to confront them directly, alert authorities, or use the evidence as leverage. Her anger was precise, methodical, and unnerving, contrasting sharply with the reckless abandon that had characterized the affair. Every calculation she made demonstrated that the power dynamic had shifted completely. The nurse, once in control of her own fate, was now at the mercy of someone she had underestimated, and the patient's influence was fragile against the force of betrayal. The discovery of the videos transformed a secret passion into a dangerous weapon, and the consequences were about to unfold in ways that no one involved could have predicted. After the discovery of the videos, the atmosphere became tense and fraught with danger. The wife, fully aware of the nurse's involvement, began to assert control in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Threats were issued, not in public, but through carefully chosen messages and calls that carried a chilling precision. Each word conveyed a clear warning. Any misstep could trigger exposure or worse. Fear replaced the nurse's earlier confidence, and she became hyper-aware of every action, every movement, and every message she sent. Simple routines that once felt routine now carried immense risk. The patient, caught in the middle, felt the pressure mounting. His obsession with the nurse conflicted with the need to protect his family and maintain his social standing, leaving him paralyzed between desire and responsibility. The nurse attempted to negotiate, to reassure, and to manipulate circumstances in her favor, but each move only intensified the threat looming over her. The wife's vigilance was unyielding, and her calculated responses revealed a level of determination that neither the nurse nor the patient had anticipated. The situation escalated into a psychological battle, with each party testing boundaries, gauging reactions, and probing for weaknesses. Tension hung in the air, electric and unpredictable, as every interaction carried the potential to ignite disaster. The nurse realized that the carefully constructed world of secrecy and passion had collapsed, replaced by a precarious environment where fear dictated choices. Trust had vanished, leaving only suspicion and anticipation. The balance of power had shifted entirely, and the consequences of their previous actions were closing in, signaling that a critical decision, one that could change lives irreversibly, was imminent. Paranoia gripped the nurse as the pressure of the situation became unbearable. Every glance at her phone, every knock at her door, and every passing stranger felt like a threat. She realized that the secret she had once controlled had slipped entirely from her grasp. Thoughts of escape consumed her, imagining flights back to India or the destruction of all evidence that could link her to the affair. Yet, the patient refused to abandon her, insisting on meeting, sending messages, and making plans that tethered them together even as danger loomed. Their connection, once thrilling and intoxicating, had become toxic and suffocating. Each decision they made seemed to tighten the trap around them, and the tension escalated to a breaking point. Miscalculations, born of fear and desperation, began to multiply. Every interaction carried the potential for exposure, confrontation, or retaliation. The nurse's mental state deteriorated as she struggled to reconcile the intensity of desire with the reality of risk. She could no longer differentiate between safe choices and dangerous ones, and the patient's insistence on staying involved only compounded the uncertainty. The delicate balance of secrecy, passion, and control had shattered, leaving chaos in its wake. In a moment driven by fear, obsession, and the need to reclaim control, an irreversible action was taken, one that would leave permanent scars. The thrill of desire had morphed into a life-altering decision, and the consequences were immediate and devastating. The boundary between passion and crime had been crossed, and no amount of planning or negotiation could reverse what had been set in motion. Lives were about to change forever, and the aftermath would reveal the deadly price of obsession. The investigation that followed the deadly incident was meticulous and relentless. Authorities quickly pieced together evidence from multiple sources, uncovering a tangled web of secrecy, desire, and betrayal. Digital forensics revealed the hidden videos, messages, and call logs that mapped the progression of the affair, exposing details that neither the nurse nor the patient had anticipated being discovered. Interviews with colleagues, neighbors, and hospital staff provided additional context, highlighting patterns of behavior that now appeared reckless in hindsight. Every recorded interaction, every private meeting, and every act of concealment was scrutinized under the harsh light of investigation. The patient's financial and social status drew additional attention, as investigators sought to understand the full scope of influence and motive. Meanwhile, the nurse's role was dissected, with her decisions and movements analyzed to determine intent, opportunity, and culpability. The wife's careful observations and swift actions became a crucial part of the narrative, her initial suspicions and strategic responses helping authorities reconstruct the timeline leading up to the incident. As evidence mounted, the severity of the situation became clear. This was not merely an affair, but a series of deliberate choices that culminated in a tragic outcome. The investigation revealed not only the personal failures and misjudgments of those involved, but also the dangerous consequences of unchecked desire and secrecy. What had begun as a hidden attraction escalated into actions that defied control and morality, leaving authorities to unravel a story that was as shocking as it was inevitable. Each revelation, more damning than the last, painted a picture of obsession, betrayal, and the deadly consequences of passion left unchecked. The aftermath of the affair and the deadly incident left a trail of devastation that touched every life involved. The patient faced legal consequences, his reputation shattered, and his freedom at risk. Friends, colleagues, and the broader community struggled to reconcile the image of a respected, successful man with the shocking reality of his actions. The nurse, once ambitious and confident, found her career destroyed and her future uncertain. Her name became associated with scandal and crime, and the choices she had made in pursuit of desire had irrevocably altered her path. Even the wife, though she had acted with precision and had uncovered the truth, could not escape the emotional fallout. The betrayal she endured left lasting scars, and the events she witnessed haunted her in private moments, a constant reminder of how quickly trust and stability can be shattered. The story spread widely, circulating as both a cautionary tale and a gripping account of passion and danger. Social media, news outlets, and local communities dissected each element of the affair, each decision, and each misstep, amplifying the consequences and ensuring that the events would not be forgotten. Beyond public scrutiny, the personal toll was profound. Relationships were broken, careers destroyed, and emotional trauma persisted. The narrative served as a stark reminder of the risks inherent in forbidden desire, secrecy, and obsession. What began as attraction escalated into a sequence of choices with irreversible consequences, showing how quickly hidden passions can turn into public tragedy. In the end, the story stood as a warning that actions born of impulse and secrecy rarely end quietly, and that the fallout from betrayal can reach far beyond the immediate circle, leaving scars that may never fully heal.